Okay, so if we're done, I'm just going to make my concluding remarks. I have two main points that I want to make that I think emerge from the common themes that emerge from the presentations. I think from the we saw a variety of presentations, and some of them are more grounded in natural sciences, and some of them are more grounded in social sciences. So they have different degrees of content there. From the standpoint of the natural sciences, there's a recurring theme of monitoring. And the fact that even as good as the monitoring system has been in Colombia, and believe me, some of the presentations that we had about spatial locations, contaminants, all those things, are just unknown in Peru and Bolivia. Now, that's a big problem, both for the reasons that Paul pointed out at the beginning in his introductory remarks, but it's also a big problem in the sense that we end up having this, I think coming from Leonardo, right? We have this tendency to do like the joke that if you're drunk and you're looking for your keys and you're looking under the lamppost. So whatever it is that we've shed some light on, that's where we're looking for the keys. And the keys may lie entirely elsewhere. So the focus that is on things that we can see from the remote sensing, because remote sensing is easy. But the system has already adapted. The system has adapted so well that the actual production of coca cultivation has shifted to places where there's too many clouds for remote sensing to be effective. So that's really, it's a real systemic response to an action that was taken from a purely technological standpoint without an information about the greater context. And this takes us directly into the social sciences and into the actual knowledge of the cocaleros that was brought into the presentations here, either by proxy, by looking at whatever economic indicators we could get at hand, or by actually talking with them, as I know that the monitoring system has tried to do over time. And what that tells us is that the fate of Coca and the fate of the cocaleros is intrinsically tied to rural development and to the actual promise of the nation state, the promise to every one of its citizens that they are going to be a participant in society, and yet the failure of that promise to come through those marginal areas of Colombia that map completely to the coca growing areas. Those marginal areas, marginal ecologically in the sense that the productivity there for the normal cash crops is not there, and so we have coca coming in real strong for both ecological and economic reason, and marginal in terms of having an impact on the national policies, on the people who are having the reins of the formal power in the central nation state that is politically organized and has electric lights, like we saw in the map presented by Leonardo. So actually following the fate of the cocaleros, asking the cocaleros themselves, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? What are the powers? Or not asking directly, actually just listening to them, let them tell their story. What emerges out of it is the opposite of the simplistic wheels in motion approach that was taken by Plan Colombia. I was already in the United States when Plan Colombia really got its kind of intellectual push. And I was at presentation when individuals, policymakers from places like the State Department would come in and say, in Putumayo, if we just wipe out the coca production, these people are going to go right back to where they came from. And this was just a bizarre statement for me. It was bizarre because I said, well, where did they come from? And they would say, well, they're not from there, so they will go back to where they came. And I said, well, where's that? How does that work? If they had talked to Mara Clemencia Ramirez, who's been mentioned, or if they talked to either of you, you would have known that it doesn't matter where you come from, where you are, that's where you are. And that's the identity that you take, and that's the livelihood that you have. And it wasn't as easy as just spraying a bunch of glyphosate and watching the crops melt away, which actually hasn't happened. What we have is a story of chronic persistence. So again, we used that lamppost. We're looking for those keys by measuring the thing that we can measure easily, but the things that we cannot measure easily, so the actual development of a civil society that is functional and that is inclusive and that has the voices of all these smallholders heard, that makes a smallholder economy viable in these lands, that we don't have. We don't have indicators for that. So we have monitoring on the natural sciences side from our lack of knowledge about how much poison is bleeding into the rivers and into the soils and into all these regions of Colombia in the great highest biodiversity place in the world. The Andean and Choco forests of Colombia have the highest biodiversity of the world. And complete obscurity, lack of knowledge on the social science side and our understanding of the cocaleros as smallholders, as entrepreneurs, and as society building people in the regions. So thank you.